This is Creative Banter. It seems this is the time of year for beautiful trips into the wilderness, as Ben returns from his spring backpacking trip, and I prepare to head off into Acadia. Most of the conversation revolves around these adventures, but as usual, we throw in a bit about productivity, anxiety, and expectations. Oh, and Ben is slowly transforming into a true Spandex Warrior. So that makes for a nice visual. Let's dive right into this, shall we?
Let's see, we were recording this on Thursday, and on Monday, I came home from my spring trip that I had been threatening for a very long time.
Summer trip.
And
pretty much.
Yeah. It's just threading the needle in terms of almost a summer trip. I mean, it's just that last little window of the spring season.
If you had pushed it another week, it would have had to be considered a summer trip because of the solstice.
Yeah. Is it right toward the end of June, right?
I believe it's the 21st.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think it always falls on my cousin's birthday, but roughly.
Yeah. But it was, I'd been watching the weather ever since late April and just looking for that window when I would have at least a couple days of sun, because I know I could be pretty productive in a short period of time. And, without any big rain in the forecast, without it being too hot. And I gotta say, man, when I was there, when I was driving in, there was a thunderstorm brewing overhead, which is always a little unsettling. Yeah. And so when I saw that, I decided not to drive all the way to the trailhead on that first day, because then there's going to be a lot of dirt roads. And if there was any big rain that fell, it would have made the roads pretty much impassable until they dried. So I was able to camp out in an area where I'm still kind of near the paved roads and then head in the next morning. But I indeed had, a good 2.5 days of temperatures in the mid 70s, mostly clear skies, not much at all in the way of wind. And there were some moments of clouds, but, I could work around stuff. I always have these plans and backup plans in terms of, however the weather reacts in terms of what sort of subjects to pursue. But it was an unusually productive spring trip. And I know that we've talked in the past about what we find to be the most difficult seasons. And you had mentioned winter, right? I think that's what you had said. Just because it's hard getting the conditions that you're looking for.
Hard to get the conditions that I'm looking for in Pennsylvania, at least, and hard to actually get out when I do get the conditions because of my Corolla not being the best in snow.
Yes, not exactly one of those like massive lifted vehicles you see in Iceland with the huge tires taller than a person.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing any overlanding with it anytime soon.
No. But it was, I brought 4 film holders with me on the backpacking portion of the trip. And so I had the ability to take 8 photos, and I was acting very restrained, and I was limiting a single sheet of film per subject, except for one subject, which I returned there to photograph specifically. And I shot 2 sheets on that just because there's a tree where the leaves would move a little bit in the wind. I just wanted to make sure I had 2. And sure enough, one sheet of film is better than the other. But it was interesting because this is the second time I'd hiked into that canyon. And there were 4 large cottonwood trees that were just gone. And because they had some massive flash floods that roared through there. I don't know if it was during the past summer season. We've also had a very active winter season. But as I was walking down the canyon, because I walk kind of downstream down this canyon all the way to the point where I get to a river. And as I'm walking down the canyon, I'm like, oh, wow, there used to be a tree here. And then I'm like, there's no tree here anymore. And then walk a little further. I'm like, well, that tree's gone there too. And so then I'm like, where did these trees go? Because one of the scenes I wanted to photograph, it's a scene I photographed last year, but just the light wasn't great. But it's these 2 kind of rounded boulders on either side of a wash, and in the background there's a canyon wall, and there's a like 3 cottonwood trees where the trunks all kind of look like it's the same tree. A really beautiful scene. But those 2 round boulders kind of serve as obstructions along the wash. I'm like, oh, I sure hope one of those trees is not hung up between those boulders, because then that scene is not shootable this year. And I'm heading further and further down the wash and not seeing the trees. And I start seeing like a couple chunks of the trees. I'm like, uh-oh. And right when I turn the corner to where that is, I see one of the trees hung up on a boulder that's maybe, I don't know, 70 feet from my scene that I was going to photograph. So it got caught at the very last minute just before reaching that scene.
Nice.
And that scene was still perfectly shootable. But it was, I mean, I shot 7 different subjects on the backpacking part of the trip and then 1 more after that. So, it was a pretty decent range of stuff. But the entire time I was there, I was just thinking to myself, I am not enjoying this.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a sort of thing where I had to kind of talk myself into this because I'll look at the pictures I take down in those canyons. And I love the fact that I could be the only one there. I literally saw 2 people the entire time I was in that canyon. They were going on a rafting trip down the river, and then we're just camping in the canyon I was for the night. And they're cool guys, and it was cool chatting with them a little bit. But other than that, I saw no one in there, no fresh footprints or anything. And so I have these canyons to myself where I can spend as much time as I want a subject. I can fine tune things. There's no distractions whatsoever. All that is great. So from a photography standpoint, I look back at those photos and I'm like, man, it's like paradise down in there. But then as I'm thinking about it, as I'm hiking out of the canyon, I'm like, I should have a sense of accomplishment right now as I'm hiking out of this canyon. I exposed every sheet of film. I waited for this window of having good weather, and the weather was indeed very good. Everything went very well, but I had no sense of accomplishment as I was hiking out of the canyon. And so I'm like, something's wrong here. What is it that is wrong with the scenario? Because typically I'd feel very good about that point of the trip. So then I started thinking about it. If you look at these trips on paper, they're a lot of work. According to my Fitbit, I was doing about 16 miles a day. Yes, it's nice to camp down there and such, but there's times when the wind kicks up, dust is kind of coating everything. There's mosquitoes. There were gnats that were constantly kind of like biting me in the face. And every now and then at my campsite, you get this little whiff of death. So there was something dead nearby. I couldn't find it. It may have been on the other side of the river. And the river was flowing pretty high to the point where I couldn't cross it to go check out the other canyon.
That's got to be so reassuring. You're just trying to sleep and you get whiffs of death every few minutes. That's great.
Yeah. It's just like I know that there's something here. It's maybe there's a dead cow a little bit upriver or something like that. But it's just in the proximity of my campsite. I was getting a little whiff of that. But just all of that on paper, none of that sounds great. And then you combine that with the photography side of things and a little bit of pressure that goes with it in terms of I do need to find some subjects. I do need to expose some film. But I think it's just that those trips in retrospect are great. I'm already kind of wishing I was back there right now. But while I was there, I enjoyed the photography side of things, like finding a subject and then kind of going into that zone where you're just, I'm focused on what I'm doing, setting up the composition, the focus, and metering. I love that part about it. But I think it's the fact that I don't let myself rest because I really, it's difficult to do that on those trips. Because I do have to stay productive from the standpoint that I kind of need to be on my feet and scoping things out because I'm still learning the canyons. But all of this just to say that it wasn't a completely wonderful experience, but I was far more productive on this trip than I have been on any of my past spring backpacking trips. So I'm not quite sure what to think about that. I mean, the photos turned out pretty good.
I mean, how do you measure productivity when it comes to that then? I mean, you say that it's been your most productive trip thus far for backpacking. How are you measuring that?
From the standpoint of identifying some pretty good subjects and successfully doing what I need in terms of finding ways to capture them. Because I was thinking back to when because the first of these solo backpacking trips I did, it was 10 years ago. It was in 2013. And I would spend maybe 4 days in a canyon, and I would end up with maybe, I don't know, 2 photos. And on this trip, I was camped in the canyon for 2 nights. And so I shot another photo on the way out. So it's kind of like 3 days worth of shooting. I already looked at my film. I think I actually have a pretty high number of portfolio shots. Honestly, I think not all of them, maybe a couple of them missed the mark a little bit, but most of the photos are portfolio worthy. So I think I've become a better photographer in the standpoint of learning to identify subjects, learning to identify the right conditions, working with the natural conditions of, oh, there's a cloud, but I can shoot this thing over here because it doesn't really matter as much. So I've become a lot better about it.
Kind of better at identifying what is going to lead to a better photograph, what's going to be more in line with what you want to achieve with it, right?
Yeah. Being more open to my surroundings and seeing more potential in my surroundings as opposed to having some degree of tunnel vision, which I think I've had more so in the past. And so in that sense, it was pretty good. But I don't know. I have mixed thoughts. I'm glad that the trip is done for a variety of reasons. Also, as soon as I got back, the plan was that once I was done with this trip, then my wife and I were going to schedule time to head back there because I want to show her some of these places. And when we go back there, I'm not really looking for specific conditions in terms of like, oh, if there's clouds are evil. Now it's like, oh, clouds are cool looking, you know. Oh, what if there's thunder and lightning? I'll die in a flash flood. Now it's like, oh, cool, we can watch it from inside the car, you know. So it'll be a whole different perspective. So we're heading back there in about a week and a half. We'll spend five days there. I'll show her some of the cool places, and I think that will be a really fun. I think it'll be a fun trip for the both of us, so that she can see where I am when I go on these trips. Because she's been to some of the areas over there, but not really specifically this area.
So is this like, so are you going out backpacking together, or is it more of just like, it's just regular camping, or not even?
No, this is we just staying at a hotel to have some air conditioning, to have a shower. Gotcha. Yeah.
I wasn't sure like how much you guys actually camped together. Cause like my girlfriend and I camp all the time. We haven't been in a hotel since, last year, but that was only because of being in Nashville.
We enjoy going on our camping trips. And prior to the pandemic, every summer we'd go on a pretty big camping trip, whether it's to Glacier, Yellowstone, places in Utah and such. But this time of year, it's going to be pushing 90 degrees on days. And it's not fun camping when it's that warm. And then just covered in like dust and gnats bugging like flying into ears. And so we've got that coming up. And I just was booking that yesterday. And then the other thing is, as part of all that, the entire time I was on the trip, I had kind of my goal at the end of it, because I knew that I was going to be swinging through Las Vegas on the way back, because I was buying a bicycle off a friend of mine who's really into cycling. It's a really, really, really good road bike. And so kind of like in the back of my mind, I'm like, once I get through this part of the trip, once I do all this hard work, that is the prize at the end of the tunnel. And so sure enough, I stopped through Vegas, got the bike. And just before we started recording this, I was installing a bike rack in the garage, just to mount it to the wall. And I'm really looking forward to getting into that. So that's another thing that's ahead of me, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Like we were talking a little bit before we start recording, I definitely want to see about getting a bike, probably come fall or so, a little off season, once prices may go down or they have sales or whatever. I just know that I don't have the time for it.
What kind of bike were you thinking about getting?
Probably just a street bike. I don't really need anything like mountain bike or anything like that. I just want something like, I used to go biking for like 2 or 3 hours into town and had a nice little loop going for me. So I just want something to go do that and just see what happens, go along, mainly along roads. So
Yeah.
that was always enjoyable.
Yeah, there's something fun about that.
There is.
I'm really looking forward to getting into doing all that. And also, as we're chatting before we started recording, the biggest dilemma I face now is what kind of outfit I'm going to choose for the bike, because it's a road bike and I will be a Spandex Warrior. So I got to pick my my Teletubby color, and so yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, like I said, I'm glad I'm not on social media, so I don't have to see it. And I'm glad I don't live anywhere near you, so I don't have to watch you go flying by in your bright colors.
Yes. But also, when I was stopping through Zion on the way back, so when I went on the trip, it was a 12-hour drive to get to where I camped the first night. And it would have been another, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes or so to get to the trailhead. So it was a substantial drive to get there. And on the way back, I broke it up into a couple days. And so one morning I drove into Zion and I was just relaxing at that point. I really wasn't doing much hiking. I did check up on the little cactus that I photographed last fall against a fractured wall of sandstone. And I checked up on it just to see how it was doing. And it actually grew 2 new little lobes on it.
Oh, nice.
And it's not, it's not as photographic as it was before. The shape is just a little different now. Because I was thinking maybe I'll photograph that, but it wasn't looking great. So I'll see how it is in the fall. But I suspect that the photo I got of it last fall was probably going to be the best opportunity that I had. And then I'll probably just be fine with that. And then there was another little cactus I planted next to it, which grew 2 little lobes. So that one's actually doing fine. But as I was kind of sitting on the road, just kind of having some lunch, there was this lady who was on a road bike, and she was just, I saw her go by about 4 times. You kind of go up this kind of long gradual hill, and then it's just like a roller coaster with her just kind of going down the hill on her road bike. I'm like, oh, that looks like fun. So I don't know. Maybe I'll be out there at some point. I think it'd be a really cool way of seeing some of these areas that I've really come to love through the years, and just have that different perspective of sitting on a bike. I think it's something I really look forward to. And I think it'll give me a different perspective of some of these places I really enjoy.
That was what was always nice about biking around, even around here, like not photographically speaking or anything, but it just gave me an opportunity to see the world in a different way. And especially things that I'm so familiar with. I mean, I used to walk these same roads, the same route. I used to bike it and obviously drive it. And just seeing how things and your perception of things changes as you go through these different methods of transportation. And like biking is, it's not, you're not passing by everything nearly as quick, but it's still obviously a lot quicker than walking or sometimes running. So it's, I could imagine that being a lot of fun going through like Zion or even like Acadia. I was thinking about that when I was, as I'm prepping for my trip next week. I was thinking a little bit about all of that and trying to figure out what trails I want to hit, but thinking about taking a bike up there and certain trails that would be fun for that and different ways of seeing things.
Yeah. So how is it going with getting ready for your trip?
I think the big issue that I'm facing right now is the fact that it is Thursday. I leave on Wednesday.
Okay.
So my girlfriend is currently heading down towards to New Jersey for Barefoot Country Music Fest or whatever it's called. She'll be there for all weekend. She'll come back, I think, on Monday. And then she comes over here with all of her stuff, and then we pack and get going. But from now until she gets over here for us to actually be doing stuff and making sure that we pack the car and everything, I'm just in that state of like kind of anxiety of like, I want to get going. Like, I just want to go now.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that.
It's like the excitement of the trip and realizing I have 6 days till I leave. And like today was dedicated just doing stuff strictly for Acadia. I wrote up the shopping list for the food that I'm going to be getting this weekend, what foods I have to make and freeze prior to make camping a little bit easier. And then obviously going through what trails I want to hit. And designating those from like easy trails for relaxing days and that kind of deal. And then more of what I have deemed don't be a bitch trails, which are the most strenuous trails that are up there, and the ones that we didn't really hit when we went up 2 years ago, but that I really want to get to.
Yeah.
So
I'm guessing lots of gaining of elevation on those ones.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking like 600 feet, 900 feet elevation within a mile, less than. So a lot of these, you're going like straight up.
Definitely pretty steep.
Also, with pretty much all of these, it's iron rung ladders that you're navigating at certain parts and everything. There's 2 of them that I wanted to do that are like this, but they have peregrine falcon nesting going on right now until the end of the year. So they close down those trails that way the falcons don't get disturbed by the terrible creatures that are walking up. So, yeah. So a lot of planning, a lot of figuring things out. And really at this point, it's just a matter of buying the last few things that I need, and making sure that I have like my first aid kit together, make sure that I have everything that I need. Other than that, it's just waiting. And that's the worst part. Like I'm in that state of, like I said, I just want to go, and I have to figure out how I'm going to fill these next 6 days.
And especially since, your student teaching is over, so you have more time on your hands now.
That's the worst,
at least
of
from
it,
that standpoint.
Like I have nothing else to do, so I'm just sitting.
When you're used to having that schedule and all the things you have to do, and all of a sudden you're just kind of like released. Now it's like, what do I do? I think those are the times when our kind of mind gets the best of us, where it's like you start overthinking things and everything else along those lines. Yeah.
So, I mean, because that's the other thing. There's some, like, I don't know when I had mentioned it last, but last year, really, I had been working on a series of photographs of Coke machines.
Yeah.
I was thinking there are a couple of photographs that I really need to redo that are within maybe a half hour from my house. So I was thinking that I'd go through and work on those this weekend while I have the free time. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, do I really want to take my camera out and do that and use the film when I don't know how much film I actually have? Like I have 25 sheets of film that I just bought, and I have whatever's left in the box beside of me that I had bought in April of 22. Which I think should be at least 25 sheets, maybe closer to 50, something like that.
Yeah. And now that you're in the window of not really being able to get more film.
Yeah, I'm in that.
Because you're that close to your trip.
Actually, you'd be surprised. B&H ships really quick.
Do you have a local place? Oh, B&H.
Yeah. They were like, literally, I just ordered something on Wednesday. It got here today kind of deal. Like,
wow. That's definitely an advantage of being closer to them physically.
Exactly. Their shipping is like maybe 2 hours. One of their warehouses is like 2 hours from my house, not even. So it's very quick shipping. So it's not so much a matter of not being able to get more film. It's more a matter of not wanting to spend the money to get more.
Yeah.
Because I looked and checked the prices again. I'm like, there's a reason why I got a box of 25 and not a box of 100 like I normally do. Because that went up from, I think, around $220 the last time that I bought a box of 100. And now it's up to about 300.
Wow, I mean, obviously my film has gone up as well, but I'm used to with 8x10 with things being stupidly expensive. Yeah. And usually when I think of 4x5, like, it's not that much. But yeah, when you certainly have that much film, that really does.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like a box of 100 lasts me typically over a year. So like I said, this box that I have aside of me that's of 100 sheets, it still has at least 25 sheets in it. And I bought that in April of 2022. So it lasts a while and it makes it worth it. But it's just that right now I'm like kind of in that space of I'd much rather just buy 25 sheets and really limit myself going off to Acadia. So we'll see if I get out for those Coke machines. But
yeah. So looking forward, like looking ahead to your trip, what do you have any objectives at all from a photography standpoint, other than just seeing what you find? Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to?
The biggest thing that I'm looking to photograph, because I messed it up when I was there last time, and this is really the only photographic objective that I really have, which is nice because I don't want to go in with expectations and all that.
Exactly.
But the little tide pools that form around like the lighthouses and everything, I want to see if I can't photograph those snails again. I don't remember. I know I had talked about it last year when we started this. I had talked about it a little bit, but I was at this one lighthouse and I took a photograph of the lighthouse because that's just what you do, I guess. And then I looked down and I saw these little tide pools, and I remember my girlfriend and I were just looking into them, sitting around watching these little snails and these little creatures that were all inside and nibbling on the like the seaweed and whatever else was in there. And I remember I had my camera out. I had it pointed down to try composing different photographs. I think I exposed maybe 3 or 4 sheets to it. And I remember, 4x5 or 8x10, any large format, weird old cameras, when you have them out, you're always a spectacle around people.
Yes, that is very true.
And normally, as I've said before, I don't mind it. I like those interactions from time to time. And I did in this case too. It was just one of those deals of like, I have this 4x5 camera out. I'm pointing it at this tide pool that nobody else is really paying any attention to besides my girlfriend and I. So we look, comparatively, we look like weirdos to everyone else, not looking at the lighthouse, not getting selfies with a lighthouse or whatever. And it was just I have a very fond memory of that. And so I'd really like to go back, and I wish I had those photographs. I wish they had turned out right. But, we'll see what happens again. I might get some starfish and see Patrick in the water,
Yeah, and I mean, that's the cool thing about those areas because they change so much. And I've seen some really beautiful work from a variety of photographers who, work in those conditions. And we have some nice tide pools here along the coast in San Diego. And it's one of the things where they'd be like, school trips as a kid going out there and going, checking out the tide pools and all that sort of stuff. It's never been something that I've personally wanted to photograph it just because the conditions are very difficult for working with large format, because I can't really put anything down because water's coming in from time to time and there's sand and everything else. But I've always been drawn to those areas, and I think it does make for some very cool photos because you're photographing something that looks that way for that moment in time. But with the way that the tides come in and everything else, I mean, everything is constantly changing. Yeah. So that, you'll probably have a wealth of subjects to work with. And just, that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to those more intimate subjects. Again, those things of like, people see me working and they're like, what the hell are you photographing kind of thing. It always entertains me a bit. But I think the other thing that I want to more focus on, when I first went to Acadia, I didn't really understand what I was walking into when I went there.
How so?
I didn't do like any research about the place. I didn't really know what Acadia was. I had heard it was this amazing, beautiful place up in Maine and that it was a very popular national park.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I really knew what was there photographically. I didn't really know what to expect.
Do you think that was a good thing in the fact that you went into it blind?
It had its perks, but it also had its detriments. So, first of all, in terms of like its detriments was the fact that Acadia is made up a lot of these little mountains, and going there and not being prepared and really realizing that when you're there, you're going to be summiting mountains essentially. It's nothing like out west, but you're still, like I was saying, 900 feet elevation within less than a mile of hiking. A lot of these are like straight up. And so I didn't know what trails to really hit. I didn't really know which ones were going to be super strenuous and which ones were going to be easy. I didn't know anything about the place. That was good because I went there without any true expectations. But at that same sense, it kind of killed me a little bit because when I went there, I photographed way too much because everything was so new and I wanted to try and capture everything. Yeah. So the nice thing going back into this is I know what to expect. I know what trails I want to hit. I know just the general vibe of the area. Like it's not going to be like my normal forest most of the time. I need to realize that a lot of the times I'm either going to be photographing like intimate things like the tide pools, or I'm going to be photographing like the ocean views and that rocky ocean views, that kind of thing, which is something that when I first went there, I just wanted forest. And I didn't want to photograph the ocean. I didn't want anything to do with it. And now going back, I'm like, well, shit, kind of have to. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really looking forward to going back. But I'm also going there with the expectation that I'm not going to be photographing a lot. Just being super realistic about it. I'd be happy to come away with 8 photographs, like 8 sheets of film exposed total, versus the 40 to 43 that I had last time. Just because I want to enjoy everything, but I also have a better idea of what I actually want out of this place.
Yeah. And I think for some of the people who are listening to this, it probably sounds absolutely crazy to say 8 photographs.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just something that in the digital world makes no sense. But that's a very interesting number because that's the exact same number of the sheets of film that I took on my trip. I did not feel limited by that. I mean, you can make every shot count. And if even half of those turn out to be like, portfolio grade shots you're really happy with and the conditions are great and everything, if you walk away from a trip and you have like 4 really solid photos, that's really good. And it's something where like when I start shooting lots of subjects, at a certain point, I feel like I lose the connection a little bit with each individual subject. And I think one can very easily shoot too many photos and have too many good photos in a way where you just don't really have that connection with them as much. So I'm definitely on board when you say, if I expose 8 sheets, I'm like, that'd be a pretty good trip. I know that there's people screaming at their phones or whatever right now, like thinking that we're crazy, and we are
definitely crazy.
There's truth to that.
No, but I was thinking that like as soon as you said that you only brought with you 4 film holders, I mean, of course, you were only there really for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
So 3 days versus 10 days and 4 film holders is quite a bit of difference. But yeah. I think I actually might just throw into my bag 4 film holders, leave my other 2 here at the house. And I mean, I'm bringing with me my box of film and I'm bringing with me my changing tent. I'm right at a campsite. I can change film whenever I feel like it, really. So if I get to a point where I go down this trailhead, or say I go back to these tide pools and I photograph or expose 8 sheets of film at there, but then we're going off to another trail and I feel like I want to reload film, I have that opportunity. I have that ability. But I also think there's a lot of merit in limiting yourself to and constraining yourself to a certain number of photographs. So that way you really have to think through every little thing that you want to do. And a lot of times I'll set up my camera. I'll really think that I actually want to photograph whatever subject I'm pointing it at. And then I look through it and I go to grab the film holder and I look again. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Sometimes when approaching a scene, I'm most curious if I could find a compositional solution for that scene. So something I'll say sometimes is like, I just want to see if I can, put a rectangle on this scene, see if I can find a composition for it. And there's times where I'll set up the camera just to see if I could find it, but just I'm not necessarily feeling it in terms of taking the photo. I think some of it is just a matter of just to see if I can find something, just to satisfy my own curiosity in that sense. But when it comes time to drip that shutter, it's you have to really be feeling it.
I think the other thing that's going to really help me out is having the Ricoh with me as well. As much as I don't want to like fall back on that and not photograph something with a 4x5 just because I photographed it with a Ricoh, which I don't think will really happen. I've been pretty good with that so far with taking the Ricoh with me on trails, but I think it's going to help me where if I want to see if a photograph will work or see if a composition I can piece together correctly or whatever before pulling out the 4x5 and using up that 20, 30 minutes to set it up kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big assist and also keeping me from photographing too much. I mean, if I photograph 500, or if I take 500 photographs with a Ricoh, that's whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be a pain to look through them all, but
Yeah, exactly.
at the same time, it's not a big deal because it's not like I'm wasting money or wasting film or anything. So
in Acadia, where you're heading to, is that an area that sees like interesting, like, you know, summer thunderstorms in the skies, or anything where you might be working with any skies at all?
I'm hoping so, but I'm not too sure. I mean, I'm right over the ocean, so I'm thinking that I will get something over there. But it's also weird. Like, I was looking up the temperatures for this trip, and it's like very temperate.
Mm.
Like, when I look up, I mean, it's like mid 50s at night to a high of like 75.
Oh, that's nice.
So, I mean, that's really nice weather compared to what we had before, where we were like bundled up on our actual hikes and really bundled up for the 40s, high 30s at night. And that was in May. But so
that's cool.
I'm looking forward to it. I think the other thing too that I want to try doing is we didn't really explore Bar Harbor a whole lot, which is the town right outside of Acadia. I mean, we had gone into town a couple times for like ice cream, or we went to dinner, I think once last time, and we plan on going back in there and having dinner again. And so, but I think I also kind of want to take a Nick Carver approach to some of this and see if I can't find any like Coke machines or buildings that look cool too, and just something else too that's not just nature, but that can satiate some of my human elements, liminal spaces kind of photographs.
Some of the other projects you're working on and stuff.
Yeah, just a nice little mix, just get some variety. I think my girlfriend would appreciate that on at least one of the days when we plan on going to dinner. Just spending the day in Bar Harbor, seeing what's around and just kind of relaxing.
Well, that's cool. That's definitely something to look forward to. And I hope the weather stays good, stays reasonable. And it sounds like you'll be heading out there, you know, similar time to when I'm heading out back to the Utah area with my wife. So yeah, it's that sounds like that'll be a fun trip for you after all the trips that you've had to postpone and cancel and such over the past year or so.
Man, it's going to be weird though coming back from it, because I have little over 2 weeks, little under 3 weeks from the time that I get back. I move my girlfriend in, and then I go to Colorado. I'm like,
oh yeah, that's gonna be busy. That's gonna be a busy time. Yeah.
As soon as we get back, it's gonna be nonstop for her, especially because she gets back from this music fest and goes to Acadia, comes back from that, moves in, and then she goes off with her parents, her family, down to the beach for a little over a week. I get back from Colorado, and then hopefully she gets into a job and all of that. So we're nonstop moving this summer, it seems.
Yeah. I don't have any fond memories of moving. It's never, you know, but you know, it's a necessity in life. But yeah, you're gonna have your work cut out ahead of you. Hopefully, it's not too much stuff that she has to move in.
No, not too much. Mainly just a ton of books, but we put together a bookshelf for her specifically on this past weekend, and starting to really prep my area and move my stuff away so that she can take over. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, cool. Yeah, you're gonna have some busy times ahead, but yeah, change can certainly be a good thing.
Yeah, just got to figure out my tripod situation too for Colorado. Now that I think about it.
Oh, that's right, because you're looking for something you can carry on the bike.
Yeah,
and be lightweight and such. Any leads on that at all?
I haven't really looked in a while. I'm gonna have to start figuring that out probably this week. Start working on that a little bit before I leave for Acadia. Maybe order it even before I leave, just so that it's here by the time that I get back. I got to look at the dimensions exactly and what's going to fit into my saddlebags for on the bike, and kind of just go from there. But yeah, I'm not sure if I want to go with something like Gitzo or Really Right Stuff, something that's might be a little bit more expensive, but will ultimately last and be a lot sturdier as well. Because I have a little Manfrotto one that my girlfriend had actually bought when she was toying around with photography a little bit. And I've used that for the 4x5, but I've also messed up a couple sheets of film because of movement, just from the tripod not being so stable. So I want to get something a little bit better.
I've always been a fan of Gitzo. When I was on the backpacking trip, it's a 1 series Traveler, and I just take out the center column to save a little bit of weight. But my 8x10 is perfectly fine on that. If I was shooting in somewhere that was windy, obviously wind is an issue, setting aside even the tripod. I mean, the camera doesn't even like any wind. Mm-hmm. But if there's no wind batting it around, that little 1 series does a great job. And so I wouldn't go any smaller than that if you go Gitzo, but I know that they have some compact ones. But yeah, I mean, just you got to have something that you can trust, you can rely on.
I mean, especially for a trip like that.
Can take an abuse, yeah. And it'll take some abuse.
I'm going to be out there for 2 weeks, so I want to be able to make sure that I can use it. Because ideally, I would just take this tripod that I get, and I wouldn't have to worry about getting my bigger one. Because obviously, we're going to have the truck with us, so if we plan on going just for hikes, we'll just take the truck instead of the bikes. A lot of the times we'll be out on the bikes, just cruising around or doing whatever. I'm not sure exactly what we plan on doing, but if I don't have to worry about having 2 tripods with me and switching ball heads or doing any of that stuff, that would be ideal. We'll see what happens.
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.